It is exactly midday in the political capital Yaoundé, same time at the studios of Reflets Afrique Television. Ladies and gentlemen, you are watching the midday news broadcasted to you live from the economic capital Douala. We bring to you the headlines. Regional governors all over the 10 regions of the country have been given deadlines to install the various presidents of regional councils and members of regional offices, as well as the executive of these councils. With some of the most populous countries across Africa seeing increase in the COVID-19 cases, there have been concerns that the continent is for disease control and prevention facing another spike in infections. The African Center, that the CDC, has talked of a second wave arriving while describing it as aggressive. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what we will be developing in the minutes right ahead. Stay tuned. Good afternoon once more and welcome back. Appointed governors have been given up to January 22nd, 2021 to install elected presidents of regional councils executives, according to the Minister of Decentralization, George Elanga Obam. In a communique signed Monday, January 4, 2021, the minister calls on the elected bodies to take over duties before January 15, 2021. He also adds that the governors, under high instruction of the head of state, President Paul Biya, are the ones to preside over various ceremonies in their respective regions. The country held its first ever regional elections on December 6, 2020, where representatives of the House of Chiefs and executive of the regional councils were elected. Noted to be one of the outcome of the Grand National Dialogue, two major political parties had called for a boycott of the elections, even though senators of the Social Democratic Front defied parties' orders and voted in the historic elections. Rwanda has banned public and private transport between districts and the capital, Kigali, after the rate of the coronavirus pandemic infections reached alarming levels. Domestic and international tourists can still travel across the country, but must carry proof of negative COVID-19 test results, the Prime Minister's office said in a statement. December was the deadliest month, claiming half of the total of 105 deaths reported so far since the first case was confirmed in March last year. Officials believe the travel from cities to the countryside during the festive season is behind the new surge of infections. The country has in the past 7 days recorded 820 new cases and 30 deaths. Tesis Punga, who is in charge of primary health care, told the national broadcaster that at this level, the country should enter a lockdown. To contain the virus, we had to stop travels inside the country for at least 14 days, Dr. Mpunga said. New restrictions were announced on Monday night that will see business premises closed at 6 p.m. local time and social gatherings and events prohibited. A nationwide curfew that runs from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. local time still remains instilled. The second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic hitting Africa is more aggressive than the first, according to the head of the African Center for Disease Control and Prevention, John Kemgasong. The African continent is now reporting about 30,000 new cases daily compared to 18,000 new cases in mid-July. This reporter tells us more. With some of the most populous countries across Africa seeing an increase in COVID-19 cases, there have been concerns that the continent is facing another spike in infections. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has talked of a second wave arriving while describing it as aggressive. Countries like Rwanda, Namibia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa have imposed new restrictions to limit the virus spread. Mr. Nkengasong said the focus now is on prevention measures that should be in place and engaging with the population so that they can truly get out of the pandemic fatigue mode. According to data from the World Health Organization, the continent has been gradually experiencing an increase in the cases since September 2020. Looking at new weekly cases in the month up to December 13th, they have gone up by average of 6.1 each week. But there are significant variations across the continent, with some countries seemingly small or localized spikes, others witnessing more sustained increases, and some not yet past at initial rise in cases. In the weeks up to early December, the biggest rates of increase were mainly in North Africa, where temperatures have been falling as winter approaches. Morocco saw the largest increase in numbers of new cases on the continent, although cases there are now on a downward trend. South Africa now accounts for more than 60% of daily new cases detected in sub-Saharan Africa. Over the past 4 weeks, there have also been sustained increase in daily cases in Nigeria, Egypt, Democratic Republic of Congo, and Uganda. Cases had also been rising in Kenya and Ethiopia, although the increase have tailed off in those countries more recently. Even though many Western countries had questioned why the death toll in Africa is not high as that in the European country, Africa initially was against vaccination campaign. The reported death rate per capita on the continent has been low compared with other parts of the world, despite the weak health infrastructures in many African countries. There are wide variations in testing rate, and while some countries have reduced testing, others have maintained or even increased it. Of the bigger countries, South Africa has been doing the most, and Nigeria doing relatively few tests per capita. However, in some countries there are insufficient or no data available on testing to know how much is being done. Ugandan musician turned politician Bobi Wine, Robert Kyagulanyi, popularly known as Bobi Wine, has promised to protest any illegalities and irregularities relating to the election on January 14, 2021. This is going to be more or less a protest in my view, and protesting comes in voting, and protesting comes also in demonstrations for as long as it is within the acceptable legal confines. So it will be harming the regime, telling them that we are going to work or we are going to sit in, or we are going to do this or that. But all I can assure you is that we shall protest any injustice. We shall protest any illegalities and any irregularities. Wine said. It is noted that Wine has repeatedly been detained by Ugandan police in the pretext of going against the COVID-19 regulations during his mega campaign rallies. Bobi Wine alleged that the incumbent president Yoweri Museveni is already seemingly rigging the elections, and further asked Ugandans to stand up against such malpractices. Opposition activists have complained that Museveni have been permitted to speak to large crowds without apparent breaches of coronavirus regulations, while similar rallies by Wine supporters have been violently shut down. And following a spike in coronavirus cases in Zimbabwe, it has reintroduced a 12-hour curfew from 6 p.m. till 6 a.m. The new curfew was announced on a Saturday by Vice President Constantino Chiwenga. Aside from the dawn-to-dusk curfew, other measures have been reintroduced. Only essential businesses can remain open, and all gatherings such as wedding ceremonies or religious service are banned, with the exception of funerals, which are limited to 30 people. The measures could worsen the already troubled Zimbabwean economy. However, Health Minister Constantino Chiwenga justifies his decision by an increase in coronavirus contaminations, which is said to have almost doubled since November, rising from 8,374 cases to more than 14,000 cases. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, the country has recorded 369 deaths linked to the coronavirus pandemic. Electoral discord in the Central African Republic after the re-election of incumbent Faustin Archange Touadera in the first round with 53.92% of the vote. 10 candidates in the presidential race called for the cancellation of the December 27 elections. In light of further, Sandrine Dumbe brings us more on this report.
Tuesday, in the Central African Republic, saw 10 candidates in the presidential race call for the outright cancellation and resumption of the December 27 presidential and legislative elections in light of perceived electoral fraud. This comes after the re-election of the incumbent Faustin Archange Touadera in the first round with 53.92% of the votes was declared the previous evening by the Electoral Authority. The opposition camps cite numerous irregularities that marred the elections, as on the day of this ballot, voting could only take place or be counted in less than 1 out of 2 polling stations. In addition, numerous exemptions were granted by the Electoral Authority to voters to cast their ballots elsewhere than in their constituencies, and out of a total of 1,858,436 registered, only 695,019 were able to vote, corresponding to the participation rate of 37% out of 76.31% announced by the Electoral Authority. The election result has yet to be certified by the Constitutional Court after the appeals. In a country that has been in civil war for 8 years, 2/3 of which are controlled by armed groups, the main ones of which launched a new offensive 8 days before the elections.
We are just learning about the death of the Momo Divisional Delegate of Communication in the person of Becky Jemo Iyabo in the Northwest region, who was attacked by separatist fighters through an explosion. The delegate, accompanied by 5 others, were headed to Ngi and Jikwa with the divisional officer for the installation of local authorities in the area. More details on this will be broadcasted to you live in the 7 p.m. edition. Ladies and gentlemen, it is on that certain note that we leave you for the midday news. We keep you in the company of Le Journal de 13 avec Liliane Foguen. Stay tuned and have a blessed day.